Hello, Professor. This is my summary of Chapter 14, Capacity and Legality. One of the first things that this chapter talks about is the capacity of minors to enter into a legal contract. So minors have different rights than adults, obviously, and one of the main changes between them and adults when entering into a legal contract is the idea of disaffirmance, so that a minor is able to get out of a contract is say disaffirm the contract, which means they reject the contract even after they signed into it at some points. And disaffirmance means they have to null the whole contract, and they have to do this within a certain reasonable amount of time. If they don't do this within a reasonable amount of time, well, then obviously they can't do that because whatever they entered into may have been used. Or in the book, they give an example of a gentleman who drove a truck for a certain amount of time. Well, if he disaffirms a contract, he only gets the book value or the value of the truck now back, and not the book value for what he bought it for. Another thing they talk about is ratification of a contract by a minor. So when a minor enters into a contract, as a minor, they explicitly ratify it. They can either explicitly or implicitly ratify it when they turn 18. So explicitly means when they turn 18, they say, yes, I still want to enter into this contract, and then they are into the contract as an adult. Or they can implicitly enter into it when they sign as a minor, and then they turn into an adult, and it's implicit or implied that they enter into the contract. Another thing that the book talks about in capacity is intoxication. So sometimes when a person is in intoxication and they sign a legal document, they can be void of that contract, but that's also very hard to prove because the person has to prove that they're so intoxicated that they did not understand the contract, which can be a very difficult thing. And there's a lot of blurred lines when it comes to that as well. Another thing they talk about is mental incompetence. So if someone is not mentally capable of understanding the contract, or has some kind of affliction that doesn't let them understand the contract, well, then they can't enter into that. And this can also be a gray area because sometimes in things such as dementia, people have moments of clarity or where they understand things better than other times. So then the contract would be able to be void during those times where they have moments of clarity. The next thing that this chapter talks about is in the legality section. They talk about usury. So that's the max interest rate, so over the max interest rate. So someone cannot charge over the interest rate implied by the state, and that's illegal, and states will enforce making sure that doesn't happen. Another thing is unconscientiable contracts, which unconscientiable contracts means that they're void of conscience, which means they are just super unfair contracts. And sometimes when this happens, the court will void them because they just feel that somebody got gymped in the contract, and it's not legally binding because the contract is so unfair. Another thing, when they talk about illegal contracts, well, one, you can't enter into contracts that have illegal bias or like a crime in the contracts. They are void, and they are not they will not stand up in court, obviously, because there's a crime in the contract, and so that's not a legal contract. Another thing is in illegal contracts, ignorance of facts. So if someone enters into a contract but they don't know that they're breaking the law, or say they're hauling truck for someone and there's drugs in the back of the truck and they get arrested, will they still be able to sue for the amount they're supposed to be paid to move the truck if they didn't know that the drugs were in the truck? That concludes my wrap up of chapter 4. Thank you for listening.